Frank Abagnale, the greatest imposter who ever lived before he was old enough to legally rent a car, Frank Abagnale was flying the world for free, cashing six-figure checks, and walking into places most people could never access. He wasn't a genius hacker. His only real tool was confidence. And for years, it worked so well that the FBI couldn't catch him. This is the unbelievable true story of how a teenage runaway conned banks, airlines, hospitals, and the U.S. government itself, and how he later became one of the FBI's most trusted experts. Frank Abagnale Jr. was born in 1948 in New York. His father was a successful businessman, and Frank idolized him. Everything changed when his parents divorced. Feeling lost and angry, he ran away from home at just 16 years old, with almost no money and no real plan. What Frank did have was charm. He was polite, well-spoken, and unusually confident for his age. And he quickly realized something important. Adults believed him simply because he acted like he belonged. His first scams were small, altering checks, convincing banks to cash them, tweaking numbers just enough to stay unnoticed. But Frank learned fast. He discovered that uniforms and titles opened doors. If you looked official, people stopped asking questions. That realization led to one of the boldest cons in American history. Frank noticed that airline pilots were treated with instant respect. They traveled for free, stayed in nice hotels, and no one ever doubted their authority. So Frank did something insane. He became one. Using a Pan American World Airways uniform he acquired through a series of lies and clever phone calls, Frank began posing as a Pan Am pilot. He didn't actually fly planes, but he didn't need to. He used something called deadheading, where pilots hitch rides in the cockpit to reposition for flights. Frank logged over 1 million miles, traveling the world for free, all before his 21st birthday, and no one suspected a thing. But Frank didn't stop there. When airline checks started drawing attention, he simply switched identities. Next, he posed as a pediatric doctor in Georgia. For nearly a year, Frank worked in a hospital supervising interns, despite having zero medical training. He later admitted this was one of the most terrifying roles he ever played, and he avoided direct patient care whenever possible. Eventually, fearing someone might get hurt, he walked away. Then came one of his most shocking transformations. Frank decided to become a lawyer. By studying on his own and memorizing legal terminology, Frank passed the Louisiana bar exam on his third attempt, an achievement that stunned even real law students. He worked as an assistant attorney general, handling cases and legal filings, all while living under a completely fabricated identity. At this point, Frank wasn't just committing fraud. He was living multiple lives, constantly changing names, jobs, accents, and backstories. If someone started asking questions, he disappeared. Meanwhile, banks across the country were bleeding money. Frank perfected check fraud, forging Pan Am payroll checks that were nearly impossible to detect. By the time authorities realized what was happening, Frank had already moved on. Estimates suggest he cashed more than $2.5 million in fraudulent checks across 26 countries. The FBI finally took notice. Agent Joseph Shea was assigned to track Frank down, beginning a cat-and-mouse chase that spanned years and crossed international borders. Shea came close several times, but Frank always slipped away, sometimes by pretending to be someone else right in front of him. In one infamous moment, Frank posed as a Secret Service agent and convinced people to help him escape while the real FBI was actively searching for him. Frank was eventually captured in France in 1969. He was imprisoned under brutal conditions, losing weight rapidly and suffering from illness. Later, he was extradited to Sweden, then to the United States, where he faced a combined sentence of more than 12 years. While serving his sentence, Frank began helping authorities understand how he committed his crimes. His insight into forgery and fraud was so valuable that the FBI made him an unprecedented offer. "Help us catch criminals like you and walk free." Frank agreed. After serving less than 5 years, he was released under FBI supervision. He went on to build a legitimate career as a security consultant, founding a company that advises banks, corporations, and governments on fraud prevention. He has worked with the FBI for decades and helped design modern anti-fraud systems still in use today. The boy who once fooled the world became the man who helps protect it. Frank Abagnale's story isn't just about crime, it's about identity, confidence, and how easily systems can be exploited when people stopped asking questions. His life-inspired books, lectures, in the film Catch Me If You Can, turning him into a pop culture legend.